Good morning, class.
Morning, Roshi.
Good morning.
Good morning, cyber class. Please like and subscribe. I will try anything once, so I took notes for this Dharma talk. I actually prepared. I'm just kidding. I always prepare, but I rarely take notes. But I do have some notes today, because this is part 2 of a 2-part talk. So just to remind everyone, last week we talked about moving beyond our self-imposed what? Correct. Our self-imposed limitations, of which there's many. Oh, I could never stay sober, or I could never have a loving relationship. I could never leave a bad work situation and have things turn out real well. I could never fulfill my destiny. I could never get a master's degree. Whatever. And we talked about how that is all created in our mind. There's many koans we could have focused on. Mind as Buddha comes to mind for one. But we talked about the koan where 2 monks are arguing over a flag, and one is saying the wind is moving, and the other one is saying the flag is moving, and the master comes along and says, your minds are moving. Our minds are what create our world. It's very smoky out right now because of the pocket fire burning not too far from us, and we can either create a story that this is horrible and terrible and we can't go outside and so forth, or we can go, oh, this is an opportunity to be inside and get to know ourselves and our friends better and stay out of the heat, and maybe I should come sit in the Zendo more, or whatever, right? Today I want to talk about limitations, specifically those that are imposed from outside of our mind. So I think there's 2 major blunders we make as humans. One is putting limits on ourselves that don't need to be there, and the other is refusing to accept limits that are external. A great example is someone is standing at the top of a 100-floor skyscraper and they decide, well, this notion that I can't fly is just in my mind. There's going to be problems for that person, correct? Even Neo in the Matrix falls off the skyscraper. So if there is an external constraint functioning and we're constantly beating our head against it, we're going to waste a lot of energy. And last week we also talked about what do you call 2 piers jutting into the water? A paradox. Life is full of paradox. I would go so far as to say life itself is paradox. And I'm not saying that it doesn't exist somewhere, but I have not found a more useful set of tools to deal with paradox than Zen practice, which includes our Zazen first and foremost, but it also includes studying the koans, hearing Dharma talks, doing the services, all that. The relative and the absolute, the past and the future, you and I, night and day, summer and winter. There are all these seeming opposites that are in fact simply paradoxes. There are 2 sides of the same coin. This is why we bring our hands together in Gasha. Left and right coming together to make one. The 2 separates are one. Is also to acknowledge you and I are one. Question?
You might have already said this. I have no idea what paradox means.
Thank you for pointing that out. A paradox is something where 2 things are true that seemingly negate one another. A perfect example, Say again?
The grandfather paradox.
Say it.
You go back in time and kill your own grandfather, but since you went back in time and killed your grandfather, you wouldn't exist. So then you wouldn't go back in time to kill your grandfather? But since you no longer exist and didn't go back in time to kill your grandfather, then your grandfather would be fine. So then you'd be fine. So then you could go back in time and it repeats.
That is, I suppose, a paradox. It's also a riddle.
No, it's just
Brain teaser.
it's just why time travel is done.
I like it.
Well,
I agree that time travel is dumb, but I have also done a lot of time travel.
Well, it depends on the time travel.
Tell you what, if you do a week-long session, you're going to do a lot of time travel.
Well, we're always traveling.
And you're going to clean up a lot of karma too. But yes, it's true. We're always traveling through time. Hold your question 1 second. So I want to make sure I answer your question. Not everyone in here is in recovery, but the best example of this that I can think of is step 1 in the 12 steps, which probably at least everyone has heard, even if you're not a 12-step person.
Mm-hmm.
Powerless over the substance, and my life is not manageable. Why is that a paradox? Because once I admit that I'm powerless, in my case, alcohol, once I start consuming alcohol, I'm powerless over what happens. But realizing that is massively empowering, because my life has completely transformed since I stopped trying to control alcohol and just put it away. Does that make sense? So it's a paradox that by admitting powerlessness, I gained a huge amount of power.
Yeah.
That's a paradox. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's just for me personally. Some people can control alcohol. But, another paradox would be, I have a person in my life my karma is closely entwined with, and I was trying to control them for quite some time, and I have resigned from that role. And curiously, our relationship has improved a great deal, and both of our lives have improved a great deal since I stopped trying to control them, even though I am right about what they should be doing. I just did.
We'll see.
I am. No, we'll see. I am right. I am definitely right. But letting it go has created a great deal of serenity and peace. And actually, this person listens to me much more, because I can say, actually, we had an interaction. We've had a lot of interactions lately, but there's one that's coming to mind where I said, listen, we have established that I'm not monitoring or trying to control you, but this is something you might want to consider. And they actually heard it in a way that they wouldn't have heard it when it was me more kind of like this. So that's another paradox. By surrendering control, I've actually gained control because I have more control over my serenity now. Does that make sense? But it's a great question, because we're actually we're getting into the meat of what this Dharma talk is about. So I really appreciate the question. You feel like you understand paradox?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. There's a question over here.
You answered mine while it's in here.
Cool. That's why I have the fancy Rakasu. Okay. Enough jokes, Matt. We need to get down to business here.
I can't help myself.
I know the feeling. Okay, so actually it's interesting that we brought up recovery, because one of the things that I wanted to discuss as we were looking at the other side of the coin, so not putting limitations on ourselves, the other side is limitations are put upon us by our karma and our circumstances. Now, that doesn't mean that over time you can't overcome those limitations, but again, the paradox is to overcome the limitation, you must first what?
Accept it.
That is absolutely correct. You have to first accept it. What we resist persists. The more we're fighting reality, the more reality is going to win. Okay, when we accept reality, then we can work with it. So, we mentioned the 12 steps. Anyone that has ever gone to a 12-step meeting has heard the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, that is not part of the Zen canon, just to be clear. But it's a very Zen statement. Because one of the things a lot of people seek when they come to Zen practice is serenity, peace. There's a koan where the student says to the master, Master, my mind is not at peace. Please pacify it. The Master says, show me your mind and I'll pacify it. The student says, I've searched high and low and I can't find it anywhere. And the Master says, there, I've pacified it for you. We want peace, we want serenity, we want calm. At least some of us do. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. That's what today's talk is about. The courage to change the things I can. That's what last week's talk was about. You guys following me? And the wisdom to know the difference. That's what your lifelong Zen practice is about. Because I'm constantly trying to control things I can't control and not controlling the things I can control. Constantly. I just don't do it quite as much as I used to, and when I'm doing it, I notice faster. So I'm not promising you guys, oh, I always just try to control me and I don't try to control anything else. But I do notice it more quickly, and I don't do as much damage as I used to. Okay, so having said all of that, I would like to share with you 2 koans. The first koan is, when Baizhang was very old, he still worked in the monastery fields every day. His students, concerned about his age, hid his tools so that he would rest. Baizhang refused to eat. Finally, the students returned his tools. Baizhang resumed his work and said, a day without work is a day without food. So in other words, he was saying, if I'm not contributing to us having food, I'm not going to consume the food. He was also saying, you little whippersnappers better not be telling me what I am and am not capable of. That again goes back to last week's talk. He's going, I don't accept that limitation. One would assume eventually if he was unable to pick up a rake or a hoe, he'd have to accept food, but I don't know. We're left to wonder about that. The second one, when Master Mazu was ill, the head monk asked, teacher, how has your health been in recent days? Mazu replied, sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. That's another way of saying, meh. Come see, come saw. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It's also a commentary on death. The moon shines on us in our death. The sun shines on us in our life. This is another paradox, the sun and the moon, the day and the night. Unless you're inclined to move to Alaska, you're not going to have a day that's just day or a night that's just night. But if you move to Alaska, you will. That's all they got up there.
Well, depends.
It depends. I had a friend who lived in Alaska who told me a great story about 2 a.m. once during the summer when is it summer? Yeah, it's light all night. He hears this noise. He wakes up and there's a lawnmower running, and he goes outside and his neighbor's mowing his lawn at 2 a.m. It's bright out, like today. So, Bob, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I'm sorry, man. I lost track of the time. No idea it was 2 a.m. That's what happens. But sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha means I'm nearing my death. And you don't hear about him trying to go out in the field. So he is accepting the constraint in a way that Baizhang was not. I want to be very clear with you all that what I'm talking about is very difficult to discern, very difficult. I don't know how to do it. Generally, when I'm able to discern it, it's by sitting on the cushion and just letting the situation just
be.
be. but not in a peaceful way usually, in a lot of churn usually. The being is very active being. Sometimes it's from discussing it with a trusted advisor. Sometimes it is from an intuitive knowing. But it is possible to learn to discern. Can I control this or not? Is this a constraint I need to accept or not? And the other part of this too is we all have free will. So maybe your constraint at work is that your boss is a certain way. And the only way to stay in the job with any level of serenity is just to accept it. And by the way, impermanence rules the universe, so eventually the person is going to leave. I've had situations where I quit a job because of the boss, and the boss left, and someone new came in, and my colleagues were like, "Oh, it's so great now." And I'm like, should have stuck around. I've also had situations where I left and found a much better situation. I go, I should have left a long time ago. But if your constraint is that you really like your job and you need the money and it's within walking distance and it's really fits your future career goals and you really like all your coworkers, but the boss is kind of a jerk, you have to accept that constraint. Am I correct about that? You can't make them change. You can change your attitude, you can change your approach. You can try, you can have a conversation with them, but if they're not receptive, you have to accept it. As we get older, we have more and more physical constraints. Some of you younger folks in this room probably have physical constraints as well. One of the biggest challenges as you grow older is you must remain active or you will fall apart faster. However, as your body has less energy and your muscles get less resilient and your bones become less strong, if you overdo it, you're liable to hurt yourself. So it's very hard to find that. Again, it's a paradox. I must stay active, but if I'm too active, it defeats the purpose. Question?
Sounds like middle way.
There you go. It all comes back to the middle way. Why is the middle way so important?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Balance.
Yes. Balance, but why is it important in the context of this, of the two sides? In the identity of relative and absolute, we talk about the absolute, totality, oneness, works together with the relative, you and I, subjective reality, like two arrows meeting in midair. The middle way is where those two arrows meet. It is where all of these paradoxes join. So the middle way of I can influence, but I cannot control. The paradox of I can reach my goal, but it's going to take me quite a long time. I might not see any progress today, but I know if I don't make the effort today, I'll never get there. These are all very real. You may have a diagnosis. I myself have several. Diagnoses are very tricky. One of my diagnoses is that I'm asthmatic. Do I let that stop me from enjoying my life? No, I can still destroy Matt at pickleball anytime I want.
That's not what you do.
Well, I still enjoy teasing him about it. A man of my age and condition being able to beat such a strapping, strong young lad, it's just, frankly, it's just sad. You know, but I kid, but it's really true. Like, in addition to the fact that I'm aging, I have to.
Matt is.
I have to.
That was a whirlwind right there.
Try to keep up.
Do you feel shame?
Do I?
Yes.
I don't know.
You should work on that.
Well, first of all, Matt and I have a lot of history that allows for us to tease each other. And also, we have a cultural similarity,
We do.
which is where we're from. The more I tease you, the more I like you. That's not true everywhere. The biggest insult if you're from Massachusetts is to ignore someone.
Yes.
Anyway, but for example, the fires. I need to wear a mask outdoors right now or I am just miserable. And I feel people keep asking, are you sick? Are you feeling okay? I'm having to use my inhaler, cough drops. It's just the worst. But if I don't do it, I will end up in bed and I won't be able to get out. And I don't want that. So I'm accepting the constraint of the asthma, I'm accepting the constraint of the smoke, I can do nothing about either thing. But by practicing good lung hygiene, it doesn't derail me, it's annoying instead of devastating, right? So that's another paradox. You accept the limitation and work with it, and then it becomes less of a limitation, yes? Another diagnosis that I have is ADHD. Now, I can lean on that as a crutch and be like, oh, sorry I wasn't here, Ryan, it's just my ADHD.
It's all good. I have it too. I wasn't there either.
Where were we supposed to be and when? I don't even remember. But it's very helpful to have the diagnosis because it keeps me from being so hard on myself. Sometimes I still get upset with myself for forgetting things. But again, I don't have to accept the constraints. I can set alarms. I can ask people to remind me of things. I can say, hey, my ADHD is really bad today. I'm going to need to take a lot of notes so I don't forget anything because you're important to me. Right? You guys following what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have a diagnosis and it requires you to take medication that you'd rather not take. You know, the consequences if you don't take it are very extreme. That's hard. I had a friend who was killed because he stopped taking his medication. Not a client, a high school chum who was bipolar, didn't like how the meds made him feel, which I get. But he went off his meds and he got very manic and he was waving a BB gun around a hospital parking lot that looked real. Police came, he's pointing the gun at them, it looks real. They start shooting at him, he gets in his car, high-speed chase, crashes his car, gets out of the car, he's heading toward a supermarket with this gun, and they killed him. Which was the right thing to do, because if you have someone with a gun going into a supermarket who's clearly not in his right mind, you can't have that. But it was awful. It was awful. Awful. I'm not saying you can never go off your meds. I'm saying do it with the guidance of a licensed physician who knows what they're doing. Be careful. And accepting, oh, my mind works in a different way. I can do nothing about my past trauma. I can do nothing about it when it arises and annoys me or upsets me or hurts me. But I can choose to not traumatize myself further by keeping on playing it out. You don't have to accept your diagnoses as a constraint. You can accept it as a data point that can help you to live in an intentional way. Also, any human system has limitations. There's systemic limitations around here. There's systemic limitations in a Zen monastery. There's systemic limitations in a family, in a relationship, in a job site. Some we can work with and change, and some we can't. I remember years ago chatting with a monk up at the Great Tao Zen Monastery in Clatskanie. How's things going? He said, it's been very stressful at the monastery. What? I go, what do you mean? As well, we've just had a lot of visitors and we've had a lot of programs and one of the teachers hasn't been well and it's just been really stressful. We can't get away from dukkha even if we go live at a Zen monastery, right? But how do we work with those limitations and constraints? There is one thing and one thing alone that you can control, Don't say yourself, because it's more nuanced than that. What is the one thing that you can control? Your what?
Attitude.
Your actions. And attitude is part of that, but this is part of the Eightfold Path, right? Action. Action that leads to good outcomes, that leads to serenity, connection, compassion, joy. You can be feeling very overwhelmed and go do something that you can end up in jail for the rest of your life for doing. You can be feeling very overwhelmed and go sit on the cushion and probably not end up in jail. Call a friend, call your therapist, call a family member who cares about you. Probably not in jail. One of my teachers used to say, no one ever got up off the cushion and killed somebody. Now, in the 2,500 years of this practice that we know about, plus the many centuries that preceded it, I don't know that that's true. Probably there was someone at some point who was just really mad. But I think most of the time, if we're really spun out and we sit on the cushion for a good long while and we let the tears come and we let the rage come and we let the disappointment come and we let the da-da-da, probably we'll be okay. I was at a training, just kind of a final thought, I was at a training years ago on risk management, which is basically when you're in a complex environment like this, how do you mitigate risk? One of the great paradoxes of this place, which I used to talk about all the time when I was the executive director, is we accept an inherent level of risk every day. Everybody in this program, things were funky at some point. Nobody's here because things went really well. Am I right? You guys have a lot of freedom and a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of times where staff does not have eyes on you. Ergo, we are accepting inherently a certain level of risk. But we try to mitigate the risk by being careful who comes in, staying connected with you all, keeping an eye on things, building enough trust that you can tell us if something's wrong, etc., right? Anyway, at this risk management training, this attorney said, no one ever sues you the day they meet you. That's really stuck with me. Again, in the entire history of humanity, has anyone ever sued someone the day they met them? Probably. But usually lawsuits occur because of trust being violated. So two strangers meet, they don't know each other. Trust is built, things are agreed upon, there's a perception that trust has been violated, there's an escalation, it doesn't get de-escalated, the parties can't meet, they can't figure it out, so now we're in court, right? The way that we stay out of situations like that is by sitting, thinking about what we can control and what we can't, not promising things we can't deliver, not asking people to promise things they can't deliver, or even deliver on things that they can't do. That's how we stay out of what are the really bad things that happen. Breakups, divorces, lawsuits, getting fired, having our family not want us in their home, right? The way that we avoid those things is by accepting the constraints that we cannot control and by not accepting the constraints, usually internal ones, that we can control. Everybody clear on that? Mm-hmm. So this is a very practical thing, whether you meditate a lot or not. How we use our mind, how we work with this question of can I control it or not, can I change it or not, is super important. And speaking of constraints, we're at our time boundary, so I'll close there. Thank you all for your time and attention and questions. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Roshi.